This is your BMW's Driveshaft center support bracket, and what it does is align the driveshaft while dissipating any movement into the chassis of the vehicle, overall extending the life of your vehicle's driveshaft components, while ensuring that the cabin of your vehicle remains nice and vibration-free. Your vehicle's engine is only one of many factors that has to do with how your BMW drives. Your vehicle's driveshaft connects the engine and transmission to the differential. So essentially the power that comes from the engine gets stepped down to the transmission, that gets transferred over to the driveshaft, which then is connected to the differential and allows varying power outputs to each wheel independently. And so along the driveshaft, there's a series of critical components that allow all of this power to be translated smoothly and efficiently. And of them is this component right here, your driveshaft center support bracket / bearing. And what this part essentially does is connect to the driveshaft and then bolts down to the chassis of the vehicle, allowing the driveshaft to stay straight while power is being outputted. And so a portion of the driveshaft actually runs through this metal bearing that you see here, and then all the way up to the transmission and all the way back to the differential. And the driveshaft on your BMW is going to be very thick, which is about the circumference of this portion here, but it steps down and actually narrows out and then connects through to this bearing right here. And that's essentially what allows the driveshaft to spin freely as you're accelerating. And so this support bearing is extremely important because it eliminates any play or movement in the driveshaft, which is going to allow for smooth power delivery and coasting. So if this part is worn out, then it could open up a plethora of issues, like clunking sounds in the driveshaft area and premature wear on other components such as the Weibo bushing. But now I'll show you what this type of wear actually looks like by telling you what happened on my own vehicle. And so I was actually experiencing an extremely loud knocking noise through the center tunnel of my own BMW. Now the noise was too far back for it to be the engine or the transmission, so I knew it couldn't be either of those or the Weibo bushing that attaches to the transmission. But where I did hear the noise was back here underneath the armrest. And now this is what it sounded like while I was accelerating. That's literally the exact sound if I could make it any more clear. So that's how I knew it had to be my center support bracket / bearing. But I did figure it could have been one of two issues. The first one is the Weibo bushing. This component is infamously known to go bad on higher mileage BMWs, and what it does is sandwiches in between the driveshaft mounting point and the transmission face. And it basically is going to absorb most of the vibrations and play that stem from the transmission or the engine, but not necessarily the driveshaft assembly itself. And an easy way to know that the Weibo bushing has gone bad is you'll start to get micro cracks and fracturing and peeling and breakage in the rubber material. And if it fails altogether, well, it's probably going to be missing or completely destroyed upon visual inspection. Over time, those small little cracks that might look unnoticeable are going to allow this bushing to flex, which is going to cause more vibrations and play. But upon having mine inspected, it was actually in great shape, so that wasn't my issue. And so that brought me to the next issue. The part that I showed you to begin with is the driveshaft center support bearing. And when this part starts to wear, it's going to do one of two things. Either create micro cracks inside, where you can easily tell that there's materials chipping or falling away, or it's just going to be completely blasted. It's very common that once this part fails, it's never really gradual. All of the rubber material just starts to give way all at once. And if the rubber doesn't fail, you can typically hear grinding sounds from the worn out bearing inside of here. But one of the biggest ways that I kind of knew mine was starting to give out was as I was driving and I would let off the accelerator pedal, I could kind of hear a clunking sound underneath the vehicle that almost sounded like transmission mount issues. But it wasn't. It was in fact because the rubber material had completely worn out on mine. And this is where I'll be 100% transparent with you guys. I did not have the time to lift the vehicle, get underneath the vehicle, drop the exhaust pipes on the vehicle. If you've ever worked underneath these cars, you know you have to drop the exhaust pipe to actually access this part. I did not have time to do all of that, and so that's when I trusted old reliable Facebook Marketplace. I actually searched up BMW / Euro car mechanic near me, and I immediately found this great guy, Terry. I never plug people in my videos, but this dude was respectful, responsive, and drove down within a couple hours to come replace this defective part for me. On top of that, he quoted me a great price. He knew exactly what the issue was as soon as I started to tell him over text. And he reassured me he's replaced this part a million times because he used to be a tech at one of the local Euro car shops in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And then yeah guys, in no time he got underneath the car and found exactly what the issue was. My center support bearing was completely toast and missing. All of the rubber components that's supposed to hold the drive shaft in place had completely gone obliterated. The only thing remaining was the metal frame, which was bolted onto the chassis of the car. There was absolutely nothing left to support the drive shaft. And this is a real photo that he took underneath the car. But in no time, he was able to remove the drive shaft and get the bracket taken off of my vehicle. And now the bearing did give us some issues. It gets kind of stuck on to the drive shaft assembly. So he actually had to take the drive shaft back down to his place. He used a vise to hold it down and then basically just ripped off the bearing, drove back, and then reinstalled the new one. And before I could even ask him, "Are you done?" I pulled into the driveway and saw him already lowering the vehicle, because he got the job done that quickly. And now guys, remember when I told you that this is how the factory drive shaft support bearing is supposed to look? Thick rubber all throughout to absorb the vibrations and dampen any play, and an internal bearing that can rotate extremely smooth. Well guys, what we pulled out was not this pretty pristine part. It was literally just this frame here, completely missing all of the rubber, and then the bearing stuck onto the drive shaft, meaning that there was no dampening at all. The drive shaft was literally spinning freely. The center support bracket was completely destroyed, and the entire bearing that I showed you that's supposed to spin freely and allow the drive shaft to move around was completely ripped out and was literally just smashing all against the side of the bracket. Hence the loud noise that we heard from inside the vehicle. And then all the rubber that you see that's supposed to surround this thing is completely missing and has left the chat. So essentially the drive shaft went through here and this entire thing was just knocking and smashing all around like this. And guys, I'm not gonna lie, I was completely shocked and laughing because it didn't give any signs of wear. It just completely failed all at once. And not to insult anyone's intelligence who's watching this video, but it's common sense enough that this is how the part is supposed to look. So if this part has a few stress cracks and fractures and things of that nature, yeah, it might be safe to drive on it with a little bit of excess play. But when the entire bearing is ripped out of the bracket and it's obviously making knocking and pounding sounds, you should not drive the vehicle. Continuing to drive the vehicle with this type of wear is how drive shafts fail and end up in the viral videos that you see breaking and ripping through the whole underside of the car. So parts like this, when they fail to this degree here, just don't drive on the vehicle, leave it out and allow somebody to drive out, or you yourself just do the repair. Do not try to attempt getting every last mile out of it, because I'm telling you, it will end in catastrophic failure. And for those of you who want a good deal on this part, be sure to hit the link down below and use my promo code to get a discount off of yours. And I just really felt like it was extremely important to show you guys what the issue was, because it happened on my own vehicle. And for once, I didn't actually do the repair myself. Very rarely, I hired somebody that came out to me and replace this part, but giving you guys the lesson of what the issue could be is still of the same importance to me. So if you're experiencing drive shaft clunking or thumping sounds or just excess play that you can hear underneath, it could be because this part here is completely destroyed or worn out. And now remember, I did show you the Weibo disc that it could be, but if this part is still intact and you don't really see any cracks on it, it's most likely not this. This is higher up on the vehicle where the transmission is. If your thumping sound's coming from the rear or the armrest area, it's most likely because of the center support bearing. And now a point that I do want to make, because I'm completely unsure and I wasn't able to ask the mechanic, this part here looks like some sort of dust boot that's supposed to keep debris out of the internal spinning bearing inside of the central support bracket assembly. And now it looks like it perfectly fits here on the underside, but all of the new parts that I tried to purchase don't come with this. So I think it's supposed to actually stay on the drive shaft. But the weird thing is, if it's supposed to stay on the drive shaft, it would be held down with some type of adhesive. and this one looks like it's just completely ripped off. So I'm not sure if it's one of those parts that's supposed to come off over time, but I would highly consult a professional and be sure to ask if this boot is supposed to stay on the drive shaft, because in my mind, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to stay on the drive shaft assembly and keep out any dust from degrading the bearing. But I'm honestly not 100% sure. I might cross-reference the part number and let you guys know down in the comments, but all of the new center support brackets that I purchased did not come with this part. So that makes me think it's supposed to stay on the drive shaft. But that's just something small that I wanted you to take note of. So if your BMW's engine is running flawlessly, but you notice a thudding or thumping sound coming from the armrest area, it could be because your drive shaft center support bearing or assembly is worn out and has failed. So be sure to replace it as soon as it gives you any issues. Thank you guys so much for watching, and be sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell to stay in the loop on more helpful BMW videos like this one.